Imagine yourself wrapped in a soft blanket on a brisk afternoon, a steaming bowl of broth cradled in your hands. The rich aroma drifts upward, and with each gentle sip, you feel both your body and your spirit begin to warm. For many of us in our late 60s, 70s, and beyond, something as simple as a comforting broth can make a world of difference on chilly days. Yet staying warm and well-fed isn't always straightforward as we get older. Our appetites might lessen, and we may find ourselves skipping meals or relying on bland, unsatisfying options. There's also the concern of making sure we choose foods that are not only delicious, but also nourishing, especially when our needs change with age. When seniors reach their 70s and beyond, maintaining adequate hydration and nutrient intake becomes more important than ever. But if you've ever felt confused about what's truly helpful at this stage of life, you're not alone. Many of us have been told for years to stick to the same dietary routines we had when we were younger, only to discover that our bodies and taste buds have changed. That's why I'd like to share with you 3 traditional broths, each with its own fascinating history and unique flavor. They provide warmth, comfort, and a gentle way to get the nutrients we often need more of, like protein, minerals, and fluid for hydration. Over the course of our time together, I'll show you how these tried and true broths can support your well-being in ways that go far beyond simply filling you up. You'll learn about the emotional satisfaction these time-honored soups can bring, along with the practical benefits. If you're managing concerns like stiff joints or sensitive digestion, these broths have been celebrated for generations to help soothe and strengthen from the inside out. By the end, you'll feel confident in preparing each one, making it easier to ward off the chill of a winter morning or that sudden cool breeze on a spring evening. I've spent years collecting stories and recipes from seasoned cooks and healers who have passed down their wisdom through the decades. From grandmothers who kept their families healthy in the toughest times, to modern nutrition insights that highlight why these soups are so special, I've seen how a simple change in what's simmering in your pot can be transformative. Of course, everyone's situation is different, and it's always wise to check with a qualified healthcare provider or nutritionist if you have particular dietary needs or medical considerations. Still, these age-old broths are beloved across many cultures for a reason. They offer nourishment in a form that's gentle, warming, and deeply satisfying. Before we dive in, I'd love for you to take a moment and think about how often you enjoy a comforting bowl of soup or broth. Is it something you look forward to, or does it feel more like an afterthought? As you reflect on that, consider how your life might improve if you had a simple way to stay warm, energized, and content, even when the weather or your energy level isn't cooperating. If that idea appeals to you, stay with me, and let's explore together how 3 traditional broths could bring a little more warmth and delight into your daily life. Let's begin with the first beloved broth. The notion that all broths are essentially the same, or that they offer little more than a bit of flavored water, is something I hear often from friends in their 70s and 80s. Some folks believe that unless a soup is brimming with noodles or chunks of meat, it can't possibly be filling or beneficial. But let me share the story of Harold, who just turned 76. He grew up with grandparents who made chicken bone broth every Sunday, swearing it kept the family strong through all seasons. As a young man, Harold drifted away from this tradition, favoring quick meals and processed foods. In recent years, however, he found himself wrestling with a constant feeling of fatigue, noticing his joints weren't as flexible and that his digestion wasn't as smooth. He initially thought this was just an unavoidable part of aging, something he had no choice but to accept. Yet when Harold's granddaughter, an avid home cook, reintroduced him to the tradition of simmering a big pot of chicken bones, vegetables, and herbs, he rediscovered a missing piece of his heritage. Chicken bone broth is packed with collagen-rich proteins that may support joint comfort, and it has a gentle yet deeply savory flavor that feels like a hug in a bowl. This is more than just folksy rumor. While individual results vary, bone broth has been studied for its amino acids, which help support muscle maintenance and overall vitality. For seniors who often worry about protein intake or who have trouble chewing heavy meats, sipping on this liquid gold can be a soothing alternative. Preparing chicken bone broth can be simpler than you think. Harold starts by collecting leftover bones, sometimes from a roast chicken or even store-bought rotisserie leftovers. He adds them to a large pot with chopped onions, carrots, celery, a bay leaf or two, and a sprinkle of peppercorns. He covers everything with water, brings it to a gentle boil, then reduces the heat to let it simmer for several hours. Depending on his schedule, he might let it bubble away for 6 to 8 hours, occasionally skimming off any foam on top. The result? A warm, nutrient-dense broth that he can sip from a mug or use as a base for heartier soups. Physically, Harold notices that his knees don't ache quite so much after a brisk walk. Whether it's the hydrating effect, the minerals leached from the bones, or the emotional satisfaction, or a bit of all three, he reports feeling more limber. Emotionally, the comforting aroma evokes memories of childhood, bringing him back to his grandmother's kitchen. There's a sense of continuity, a reminder that the wisdom of our ancestors still applies today. If you're worried that making your own broth is too time-consuming, there are shortcuts. You could use a pressure cooker or even a slow cooker to minimize the fuss. Some folks keep a container in the freezer for vegetable scraps and bones until they're ready to make a batch. The key is to keep it easy and manageable for your life. Try thinking about a moment in the next few days when you could savor a cup of this homemade broth, perhaps as a mid-afternoon pick-me-up. Imagine cradling a mug of warm, nourishing liquid, allowing each sip to soothe your stomach and calm your mind. With that picture in mind, let's move to another time-honored broth that has fascinated people for centuries. It's easy to think that broths must always revolve around chicken or beef bones. But consider miso soup, a staple in Japanese cuisine that's long been lauded for both its flavor and its digestive benefits. Many seniors I speak to assume that if they haven't grown up with a certain food, it's not for them, or that it's too exotic or complicated to prepare. That was exactly what 72-year-old Clara used to believe. Having spent most of her life in a small Midwestern town, she was more comfortable with meat and potatoes cuisine. When her son married a woman from Japan, Clara was introduced to miso soup, and she fell in love with its gentle yet complex taste. The common misconception is that miso soup is a mere starter dish in sushi restaurants. In reality, it's a fermented soybean paste-based broth that can be incredibly versatile, especially for older adults who may want something light yet rich in nutrients. Fermentation can produce beneficial probiotics that support the gut, and good gut health has been linked to better digestion and even improved mood. While no single food is a miracle cure, the combination of protein from the fermented soybeans and the comforting warmth of the broth makes miso soup a fine option for days when you want something easy on the stomach. Clara initially worried that the salt content might be too high for her, as she's mindful of her blood pressure. The truth is, you can control how much miso paste you use, or opt for lower sodium varieties. With a bit of experimentation, she found a balance that suited her health considerations and her taste buds. She starts by heating water, or a light dashi stock made from seaweed or bonito flakes, until it's steaming, then turns off the heat before whisking in the miso paste. It's important not to boil the miso, as high temperatures can reduce some of its beneficial properties. Into the pot go small cubes of tofu, sliced green onions, or even a handful of spinach or mushrooms for extra nutrients. What Clara noticed after a few weeks of regularly enjoying miso soup was not a dramatic overnight change, nothing that would lead her to make wild claims. But she did start feeling less bloated after meals. She also felt a subtle boost in her mood in the mornings. Perhaps it was the gentle ritual of making something new, or maybe her gut health was indeed improving. Either way, it brought her a renewed sense of curiosity about the wider world of cooking. Another remarkable benefit to miso soup is its adaptability. If you have certain dietary restrictions, maybe you need to be careful about consuming too much potassium or too much sodium, this broth can be tweaked accordingly. Just be mindful of any medication interactions or conditions that might require caution with fermented foods, and remember it's always wise to double-check with a healthcare provider if you're unsure. That said, for those who can enjoy it, miso soup can become part of a warm, nutrient-focused routine that aligns with aging gracefully. A quick pause to let you reflect. How open are you to trying something that may be new to your palate? Are you willing to let go of any misconceptions about what a traditional soup should look like? Sometimes venturing into another culture's cuisine can open up a world of possibilities for your own health and happiness. If you find this intriguing, let me know in the comments or in a conversation with friends. Exchanging recipe tips is one of the best ways we can grow and learn together. Now let's explore the third beloved broth. You might be thinking, chicken bone broth is fine, miso sounds interesting, but what if I want something purely plant-based? Perhaps you're mindful of reducing meat in your diet, or you simply love the taste of fresh vegetables. There's a timeless option you can turn to, a hearty, mineral-rich vegetable broth that draws upon the bounty of your garden or local market. Many of us have grown up associating vegetable broth with a bland, watery base. Yet real vegetable broth can be remarkably flavorful if given the same care and time you might devote to meat-based stocks. The misconception is that vegetables alone can't produce a broth that's both satisfying and nutritionally substantial. But let's look at how 81-year-old Hazel, a retired teacher living on a modest pension, tackled this assumption. Hazel has thrived for decades on frugal meals, but she also deals with arthritis and occasionally struggles with chewing tougher cuts of meat. By incorporating a variety of vegetables, carrots, celery, onions, garlic, mushrooms, plus a handful of herbs like thyme or rosemary, Hazel crafts a rich, aromatic broth that brings genuine comfort on cold afternoons. Sometimes she even adds seaweed, like kombu, for an extra layer of minerals, which she feels helps her keep her energy levels consistent. While individual experiences vary, the combination of different vegetables can provide a range of vitamins and antioxidants that are gentle on the digestive system. Hazel's approach is to save scraps whenever she cooks. Celery leaves, onion ends, carrot tops, into a freezer bag they go, alongside any aromatic herbs nearing the end of their shelf life. When she has enough, she simmers them in water for about an hour with a dash of salt and pepper. After straining out the solids, she's left with a broth that's light yet somehow deeply satisfying. Hazel attributes part of her steady, calm energy to having a few jars of this homemade brew on hand. Instead of reaching for sugary snacks in the middle of the day, she might warm a cup of vegetable broth, which not only hydrates her, but helps her stay comfortable between meals. On the emotional side, Hazel finds joy and purpose in turning what might have been kitchen waste into a nourishing staple. It reminds her of lessons she learned during leaner times, when nothing edible was wasted. There's a sense of pride and self-reliance that comes with knowing you can nourish yourself from relatively simple, humble ingredients. That feeling of fulfillment, both physically and emotionally, goes far beyond the nutrients in the bowl. If you're open to exploring this option, consider starting small. Begin by saving vegetable scraps for a week and see how it feels to transform them into something truly beneficial. And if you need a bit more protein, you can always stir in some beans or lentils after the broth is done. These simple tweaks let you customize your soup to your own dietary preferences and needs. By now, you might be picturing your kitchen filled with the aroma of simmering stock, or wondering how to adapt these recipes for your own tastes and concerns. That sense of curiosity and possibility is wonderful, because the deeper you explore these traditional broths, the more you'll find they offer a path to both physical comfort and emotional warmth. Think about which of these three might best suit your situation. Could you benefit from the collagen and rich flavor of chicken bone broth? Are you intrigued by the digestive and cultural appeal of miso soup? Or maybe a mineral-rich vegetable broth is calling your name. Whichever speaks to you, there's a long-standing tradition and a host of modern insights to encourage you to give it a try. Each of these broths has the power to become part of your regular routine. They're not meant to replace any medical treatments or strict dietary guidelines you might be following, but rather to complement them in a way that's both soothing and accessible. If you do have specific medical concerns, remember to discuss your dietary changes with a healthcare professional. With that said, I hope you see how these broths might add color, warmth, and sustenance to your days. If you've stayed with me this far, you already know there's nothing fancy or unreachable about making a good broth. The most complicated part might just be finding the time or the willingness to try something new. Once you smell the fragrant steam wafting through your home, though, you might find it's well worth a little bit of planning involved. As we wrap up, let's look back at what we've covered. We started by challenging the assumption that broths are bland and lacking in substance. We saw how Harold rediscovered the joint-supporting qualities of chicken bone broth, how Clara fell in love with the probiotic-friendly miso soup, and how Hazel finds budget-friendly yet nourishing comfort in her homemade vegetable broth. In each story, we witness the emotional satisfaction that comes from reconnecting with tradition or trying something new. And we acknowledge that broths can offer vital nutrients that are often overlooked in daily meals. I don't want you to feel rushed, but I do encourage you to start soon. Sometimes the longer we wait, the more our healthy intentions slip to the bottom of the to-do list. Picture yourself a week from now, relaxing in your living room or on your back porch, sipping from a mug of homemade broth. Imagine feeling a gentle warmth spread through your body. Envision how comforting that could be, knowing you created this moment of nourishment for yourself with minimal fuss. If you're ready to take a small step, pick just one broth and write down the simple ingredients you'll need. Perhaps share the idea with a friend or family member who might want to join you. If you're more ambitious, you could plan to try all three, one each week, and see which one resonates with your taste buds and energy level. And if you're really inspired, you might document your cooking journey. Snap a picture of your simmering pot or jot down your impressions in a journal. These small acts can strengthen your sense of accomplishment and help you notice any benefits as they arise. However you choose to proceed, remember that you hold the wisdom and the power to make choices that enhance your comfort and joy. You've lived through many chapters already, and you continue to shape your story now. Embracing these traditional broths can be yet another way to nurture yourself and those you love. I wish you all the warmth and satisfaction a bowl of broth can bring. Thank you for spending this time with me and considering these timeless recipes. May each sip remind you of the resilience within you and the heritage of shared wisdom that connects us across generations.